this together. But as I said, there's nothing more beautiful than your hands. And in this process, what you do, you get to mix them together, and the other thing that you get to do, you get to see how they interact in the flow of all this. And look how gorgeous it is. I mean, every time you'll take a bite out of this, you will taste everything that we placed in there. I think I could use a little bit more salad. And this is splendid. At this point, the one thing that you want to do is bring it to the table and plate it as fancy as you can. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to show you exactly how to plate it. All right, here we go. I build the bottom with the salad because you're going to cut right through it as the elements of the shrimp, the calamari, will make you want to keep going and going. There's the elements of the oranges on top of it. And then some more shrimp and some more calamari. This is an ocean-like salad that has the flavoring of a steak. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating in calling it a steak, but the symbolism of the fullness that it will give you, and at the same time, of all the flavors that are mixed in this, that each of them has their own unique personality that makes this splendid. If I was you, I'd take a little extra moment just to make sure that it looks spectacular, beautiful, the way that you want it. As usual, if you're me, you splatter a little bit, so I take care of this. It is at this point that I always love to do a little bit of the Stellino special rub on it, a little bit of sea salt and a little bit of pepper. I like to do this together. Enough. And the last touch that nobody expects, especially on fish, is a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano. Now, this is a salad that by itself is an homage to Sicily, but it has an enormous amount of techniques that are used in bringing out a selection of flavors which are totally unexpected, and yet when they meet, they are spectacular. The calamari, the plumpiness that has now developed and how it's cooked in the olive oil, the freshness of the shrimp that mixes together with the oranges and the salad, the chiffonade that will at the same time crackle and melt under your bite. And all the flavoring that we have with the mixed cheeses, not only the feta cheese that we added, but the Parmesan cheese that we placed on top, the salt and the pepper. Each bite that you will take is a layers of flavors. It's an adventure. And this is how you make Sicilian salad with shrimp and calamari. I went to the equipment room and I was left alone to choose equipment. Now, mind you, this is 1975. Armani, who was a great clothing designer, and made a big, huge splash in Italy by designing these suits with big, huge stuffed shoulders. So the way I look at it is, it doesn't matter that it's a uniform. If you're gonna play, you gotta look good. But I saw the shoulder pads that made my shoulder particularly big, actually 3 times bigger than what they were. I remember the pants, everybody was wearing these very tight pants. I wanted my pants nice and big, and there was something called the cup. I did not believe in the cup. Well, that changed very quickly after the first time I went down the field, but that's another story all to itself. I remember finally stepping down into the field. The boys were already practicing, passing the ball, kicking, moving around, and for a moment, the whole field stopped and looked at me. In my head, I thought I was the handsomest football player who ever existed. Delusion is a great thing. Shrimp salad with cannellini beans. What is this? This is something you're gonna love me forever. This is the salad you're gonna bring to your next family get-together, and everybody's going to love you. Come on, let me show you how to make it. I find that seafood salads, when handled right, they really bring out an astonishing flavor. They're easy to digest and they're fun. And especially for you at home in summertime, you want to be next to a hot stove, you know, cooking from day to night. This is something that you can basically do with ingredients already bought at the supermarket in techniques as simple as 1, 2, 3. Let me guide you through it, because the most important thing about the salad, of all things, is the making of the dressing. And we always start with a little bit of lemon juice, freshly squeezed lemon juice. Don't give me any of the stuff that comes out of a bottle. If it is, don't count on me showing up for dinner. I'm not coming. Brown sugar into the tartness of the lemon is gonna have a beautiful balance, a little bit of sea salt, a little bit of black pepper, and now here comes the part that I love the most. With the lemon already in there, here we go with the olive oil, and we want to emulsify this into the making of the dressing. See, It is at this point that we want to add the ingredients, and these ingredients are fantastic. Green peppers. Why? Green peppers, when cut small like this, the same way in which I cut the red peppers, have a crunchiness to them. One of the things that I like when I bite into a salad is not only these wonderful flavors, but also the texture of the food that I have. Beans. You can use any kind of beans you want. White navy beans will work great, but these are drained cannellini beans, which are typically Italian. Now, what we've done, we have drained this. Why do we add them so early into the process? Into the dressing right now, what the beans are doing are picking up a fantastic flavor of their own. The bean has kind of a neutral flavor, but when you add all these other flavors into it, it picks up a personality that's totally unique. The next thing that we're going to do is add the fresh fennel. Now watch the way in which I cut this fresh fennel. I even cut the fronds of the fennel. I find that the leaves of the fresh fennel are so loaded with flavor. And it's a flavor that's very Southern Italian, specifically Sicilian. At this point now, we're going to add the shrimp. The shrimp you can buy at the supermarket already cooked if you want, or you can basically boil it yourself. If you want to add a unique and different taste to the boiled shrimp, what you can do is a bit of a trickery that I discovered by mistake. Once I opened the wrong pot that I had in the refrigerator. For whatever reason, I thought that it was a pot that had some basic condiments, put it to boil. Next to it, I put a pot of water for the shrimp. Somehow I made a mistake, and instead of cooking the shrimp in the water, I cooked the shrimp into chicken stock. And let me tell you, it has a unique, wonderful flavor because it absorbs that too. Well, a technique that I would like to tell you is Sicilian, but it's not. I learned it here in America. I'm going to put some of my special rub. The amount that I'm putting for all of this, it's less than a quarter of a teaspoon. But it's like a layering of flavor. It's like a flavor layer that connects to all these ingredients already in the pan, and it gives you a presence of something different. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is another addition of cheese. And what we have in cheese here is feta cheese, which is just splendid. It has a saltiness to it and a very earthy feeling to it. Now, you've seen me before talking so enthusiastically about this. These are chives. Why am I adding chives to this? Why am I getting so excited about it? Chives, is it because they're green, they bring color? No. The one thing that chives do have is a slight hint of onion. As a matter of fact, in Italian, we call chives erba cipollina, which means the grass that tastes like onion. And the last thing is the addition of the mint. Mint is a very Sicilian fresh flavor, but be careful, as I said before, if you put too much mint, remember it could go a little bit to the other side. Now, the salad is beautiful exactly as it is right here, right now, but I have one more thing that I would like to add, and you're going to love this. This is a chiffonade that I made with iceberg lettuce. You could also make the chiffonade if you wanted to with some heart of romaine. That's another type of salad that's even a sturdier structure that would work well, but you have to cut it as a chiffonade. You want it to be something that easily melts and it finds itself within it. The salad is ready. Now, let me show you how to plate it. To me, something else has happened with the salad, something even more spectacular. As I make it, I reconnect with this past. I remind myself who I am, where I'm from. And I also marvel at the ability that I have, not because of superior intelligence, but because of this experience that I had culinarily here in the United States, where we get so many inputs from all over the world. And this is how you make shrimp salad with cannellini beans. The first time I got hit in the field, I got hit so hard, I think the shoulder pad spun around me like the blades of an helicopter. But I loved that game. I loved the game more than I can explain. So to me, football is more than just a sport. To me, football is a religion. And when it came to life, I think that football in many ways shaped the way in which I think. I look back and I see these ridiculous scenes of myself with an helmet that was too big, with the shoulder pads that were too wide. But I think it was at that moment that I chose a path that brought me to this point. And what's it got to do with cooking, you might say? Well, like everyone else in the kitchen, occasionally, I fail. At the beginning of my career, I fell a heck of a lot more. But it is that discipline that football put into me, in which everything is possible. What are you going to do to find what it is that you've done wrong? How can you improve? This willingness to go and you can be better. And in the end, I would say that I play football when I cook. Only I don't hit anybody. I'm always smiling. And if it's Sunday, I got a glass of wine in one of my hands. I love football.
Big smile. All right, we're doing the mussel soup with brandy and saffron. What do you think? Think Vincenzo, but this is your take on it because you're throwing in that brandy.
Mussel soup with?
Brandy and saffron.
Okay.
And
Posture. You're sinking into yourself.
there it is. Oh, there it is. And action.
Mussel soup with... What is it called again? Mussel soup with the...
Mussel soup with brandy and saffron.
You got it. The happiest moment I've ever had is cooking in my kitchen. Follow me. Today, we're gonna make mussel soup with brandy and saffron, inspired by my father, and yet turn around with my own inspiration. Lentil soup with sausages, an old Italian soup reinterpreted by me. Butternut squash soup with cannellini beans and ham. Oh, mamma mia. And today, let me show you why soup is good for the soul. Come for the recipes. Stay for the story. When the time came, finally, for me to attempt the making of soup, I did it as a duty, not as a passion. The making of a soup, to me, was putting these vegetables that were boiled and then added and then in the broth and what is the flavor. And then I started to think that a soup, if you start to think of it as a sauce, it can have a dimension all of its own. Mussel soup with brandy and saffron. I would like to tell you this is all me. I invented it. No. Actually, it's a derivation from an idea originally generated by my dad, and I think he would be very proud if he could see what I've done with this recipe today. Let me show you how to make it. In the oil, we're just gonna start adding some nice garlic. You know, garlic in every one of my recipes is a present essence. A little bit of red pepper flakes. And you're gonna let the garlic brown for just a couple of moments. When you brown it, just toss it around, just like this. As soon as you see that the oil is starting to lick the garlic with a little bit of color, just a hint of it, then we go with the other ingredients. Celery, carrots. All that I ask is when you do this at home that you chop them as fine as I do, because I want them to disappear into the soup, and a little bit of onions. This is known as a soffritto, a mirepoix. The next addition is something that none of you is accustomed to see. This is not typical Italian, but it's chopped bacon. And I like to add it like this because first it's going to disappear into the base of the sauce, as we have it right here. And second, it's going to bring out a flavor that is astonishing. I'm going to lower the heat now to medium, and we're going to let this cook for a few minutes. This, to me, is the most important part. Why? We want to create a base that will give an infrastructure for this tower of flavor to be built upon. Our soffritto with the garlic, with the bacon, is the base of what we want to do. But the true addition of what we are going to do is going to be our mussels. And here we go with our mussels. We are going to cook these mussels in the pan, and there are two purposes in what it is that we're doing, and you need to recognize them exactly for what they are. We want for the mussels to release the water which is inside. It's inside the shell, and you know that the mussels are ready as soon as they start opening up. If in your process of cooking you notice that the mussels do not open up, those mussels are no good. You got to get rid of them. Now, why is it that I'm putting the mussels now instead of putting it at the end? And there is a very important reason for this to happen. But before I tell you, let me do another small addition here. Brandy. Once you add the brandy, as you can see, the mussels are starting to open, and we're gonna do this until all the mussels do open. Now, let me continue what I was teaching you. Why is it important that we add the mussels now versus at the end? Is because I want for all the flavors that are from the ocean to imbue with all the flavors that we put from the earth. The bacon, the celery, the onion, the garlic. At one point I'm gonna take the mussels out and I'm gonna reinsert them in the soup later. Why is this? Mussels, believe it or not, are fairly delicate. Once they open up, they have a range of, say, of about 3 to 5 minutes at most, where they move from perfectly done to overly cooked and almost chewy like rubber. You want to avoid that texture. So as soon as you see them opening, as I see some of them right now, you wanna start taking them out because you will use these mussels again in the soup later. And as you do it, make sure that you let the juice drop back into the base for the soup. Some will open quicker than others. Do not be in a rush. Let them go at it. There's always a couple of resilient rascals that just do not want to cooperate. So what do you do? Let me show you. A little bit of chicken stock. By the way, this will taste even more like the ocean if you were to use fish stock. It's not that easy to find fish stock at the supermarket, but if you're like me and you make it for yourself, it makes all of this taste even better. At this point, we had enough heat to know what stays with us and what goes away. So I don't like the fact that this guy's not opening the way that I want to. So, away in exile. Now, let's add some potatoes. I cut this potato in a very small 1/4-inch dice. If you do the quartering of the potatoes ahead of time, I need to share with you something very important. What is that? Potatoes, if you cut them the day before, you put them in a container, you seal the container, they will turn brown. It's just the way it is. Once they're exposed to the air, after you peel them, the coat of protection is gone, they change color. So to maintain the whiteness of the potatoes as we've done in this particular case, what I want you guys to do is, if you do it the day before, to put it in a container, cover the potatoes with water, and then seal it. The potatoes will stay a lot better. Now, this is saffron. Watch. At this point, most of you will be surprised and say, what's a small piece of nothing going to do? It's going to infuse this with a flavor that's beyond believable. But also is going to give a base to the soup that is to the other side. And yellow is the color that saffron imparts to the food that is added to. Just finished with the chicken stock, and now we're gonna add a little cream, and we're gonna bring this to a boil, and then we're gonna let it simmer for a few moments. I think that my father would be proud. He would not approve of the brandy, though. He was old-fashioned when he came to this. He would only put wine. The biggest variation that he would do to it, he would actually use sparkling wine. Now that we reached the boil, I want to bring it down to a simmer, and in the process of the simmer, I'm going to be adding the mussels back in the soup, so the soup picks up the flavor all the way through. Not only you have all the flavors, which is the base that we created with the onion, the garlic, the celery, and even the bacon, but now there is this wonderful presence, both of the brandy and the essence of the ocean that come from the mussels. So let's bring these guys back into the soup. Once you add the mussels, you don't want to take any more than 4 or 5 minutes on a simmer. But what you want to do, you want to make sure that these mussels are reincorporating into the soup the flavor. We're going to give this another couple of moments, and then we'll be ready. The soup is perfect. The soup is ready. And now, we're ready to play. Father Vincenzo, I think, would be pretty proud of the developments that I have shown over the years, but this soup is something that I always think of him when I see it. There are certain moments in life that are splendid. One of them is to see this soup. going straight into the mussel, just like this. I can smell it from here as I'm holding it. The soup has a little bit of the ocean, has a little bit of the land, but more than that, it has the presence of my dad. This is not a soup. This is a time machine. A time machine that gets me connected to my past. And in the past, I find my present. In this present, I find the variation of all these things that I learned from those who were taught me, specifically my dad in this case, Vincenzo, Vinny, as we used to call him. And the soup is a small accomplishment, not only because he taught it to me, but also because the way in which the soup is, the flavors that I can already perceive. And you do not need to be a master chef to be excellent as this, because what the soup does have, first and foremost, is soul. Soul, in so many ways. And this is how you make mussel soup with saffron and brandy. And the most important thing is that you start with the soffritto. The soffritto, which is the triumvirate, carrots, onion, celery. This is the building block of the flavors that ultimately takes the soup, wherever you want to take it. Then the addition of the wine, and it could be a regular dry wine like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay, a softer side, but I'm also using Marsala, I'm using sherry, and suddenly you start to see all the small openings on how the soup starts to pick up a direction. And while they may start the same way, they start to veer to the right, they start to veer to the left. Then you bring in the potatoes as a thickener, and then you bring the broccoli as another alternative flavor, and then you insert the cheese, and then you let them cook slowly. And that's the most important part. If you're in a rush when you make a soup, you're gonna wait. Lentil soup with sausages, or as we call it in Sicily, zuppa di lenticchie con le salsicce. Don't worry about that. You will never be able to say it as fast as I did. Even I had difficulty. The soup is the kind of soup that just fills the day with joy. Why? There's sausage, there is lentils, there is tomatoes in it. It's perfect. Let me show you how to make it. Salsicce e lenticchie. Sausage and lentils are two ingredients that go wonderful together. More often than not, is used as an entree, where the lentils are braised to the perfection that they're supposed to be braised at. The sausages are grilled, placed on top of the lentils, and brought over. Sometimes you can braise them together. And then I said to myself, Stellino, you're a genius. Okay, when I talk to myself, always pay myself compliment. It's good for you, especially when you're alone. You should do that often. And I said to myself, how about we turn sausages and lentils into a soup? You might ask yourself, Nick, what did you do that for? I just had barbecued some sausages for the party the night before, and a bunch of sausages left over. I say, how can I reuse the sausages and make it even better than they were before? And I came up with this soup. First, as always, we add the garlic, nice and thick, as I have it. In spite of the fact that I have a spicy sausage that I will use for this, I like to add a little bit of red pepper flakes. And now we're going to wait until the oil gets nice and hot and the garlic picks up some color. As the garlic starts to pick up some color and starts to jump around in the hot oil, first thing that we add will be a little bit of onions, celery, and carrots. This very basic soffritto is at the base of everything that you see me do that has an aromatic finish to it. In this particular case, what you notice is that I am almost exaggerated by really shredding them down to the finest possible size. Why do I do that? Is it extremely important? No, it isn't. But I would like for this part of the recipe to almost disappear, meaning that you will taste the flavor of it, you will taste the contribution of it, but you don't necessarily need to taste or bite into it. So remember, just because I do it this way doesn't mean that you cannot change. Now here we go with a little something that's gonna make you surprised, a little bit of brown sugar. Why? I bought into this concept of the yin and yang. And since much of the ingredients that we're going to add are going to be on the salty side, I find that just a pinch of brown sugar gives me the yin and yang reaction that I'm looking forward to. And now we go with the sausages. These are sausages that I basically barbecued last night. I put them together, I cut them into cubes. If you don't have any leftover sausage, what? You cannot make the soup? Not at all. Look, if you do not have leftover sausage, don't feel as if you cannot do this. This is great to be done with leftover, but it's just as good to be done with fresh sausage. What kind of sausage can you use? As far as I'm concerned, there's only one kind of sausage, and the sausage is Italian sausage. Every other sausage, that's not a sausage. No, it's not true. I remind myself of one of these characters in the Hollywood movies. Every time they play an Italian who was so passionate about food and only recognizes the food that his mom made. Mamma mia, la Roma, ma che bellezza! And by the way, if you know any Italian songs, this is the time you want to sing them. Next thing we do, a little bit of deglazing. White wine. Seen this technique before. As I go with the white wine, let's keep stirring. We want the brown bits that are caught at the bottom of the pan to be reintroduced once again into the sauce. And you will notice how the white wine is darkening its color. These are all the juices that have been reincorporated into the base of the soup. As this is reducing, the next thing that we're going to do, we are going to go at it with our lentils. Now, lentils, I want you to think of them as little potatoes. They're not potatoes, of course. But what they do two things. As they cook into the soup, and really, lentils cook fairly quick. Within 30 to 40 minutes, you have a complete cooking process for the lentils. But it also gives substance. They give body to the soup. Now, talking about substance and body, beef stock. You could use chicken stock if you want to, but I think beef stock in this particular flow is much, much better. Stir this around. The last addition that we're gonna make is tomato sauce. You can do my tomato sauce, your tomato sauce, or you can just buy it at the store. We're going to bring this to a boil. So once you reach the boil, it's mandatory in my mind that you reduce it down to a simmer, and especially when working with lentils, let it simmer for a good 20 to 30 minutes. The soup was reduced to perfection, and now we're ready to plate it. Now, you will understand why I'm crazy about this soup. Soup is not just nutrition. Soup is, in my opinion, something that feeds the soul, especially on those cold nights when you just want something to go your way. You know what? My life is no different than yours. Some days are great, and some days, well, I could do without. The soup to me is splendid, but I want to show you one last tidbit. What we have in here is a little bit of ricotta, and as you eat into the soup, it will spread as if it was cream. There's something beautiful about feeling alive, feeling that the food that you make is so beautiful, so gorgeous, it tastes so great. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you make soup with lentils and sausage. And one of the things that I've learned is also to top the soup with a little bit of cheeses or crumbled bacon or sauteed carrots or whatever comes to my mind. And suddenly the soup becomes to me this painting. Who knew I could paint? And look at this. Who knew I could actually make a soup? But there's something more important about the making of a soup that came to me later. It's the sense of comfort. It's the sense of this food that warms your soul, warms your heart. And as you can feel all this wonderful taste to it, it might be cold outside, maybe it's raining, and there's nothing better than a plate of soup. Butternut squash soup with cannellini beans and ham. This soup is the kind of soup that makes you feel great inside. As a matter of fact, next time you feel sad, this is the kind of soup you want to eat. Come on, let me show you how to make it. In the pan, I've already placed some of my favorite olive oil. To this, we're going to add the garlic. As usual, I have the garlic nice and thick because I want these pieces of garlic, when you bite into them, to be totally cooked, brown, maybe a little bit soft on the inside and moving on across the papillas of your tongue as if it was a cream. And that's what I look out of it. The oil is starting to heat up the garlic. Now, we're adding a little bit of red pepper flakes for a little bit of heat. The garlic has started to cook, is gonna pick up a nice browning. While the garlic is sauteing in the pan, we add a little bit of onions. Together with the onions, we go with the second part of the triumvirate, the power of il soffritto, also known as mirepoix in French cooking. And this is celery, finely chopped celery that I added to it. And together with the celery, we go with the carrot, treated the same way. What does it mean to add layers of flavor? Flavor is an addition of ingredients that you let bloom into the base of the soup, and they open up, expanding even further the reach of flavors that they have. Now, with the soffritto, this is typical. It's something that you do for just about anything that's either a classical sauce or a classical soup. But here comes an interesting portion of it all now. We have in my hand some sage, fresh sage, which I have finely chopped. And I'm gonna add it right now. Why? I'm gonna add some on top of the soup at the end, but right now what I like to do is for this to kind of meld into these ingredients and to open up, to blossom its flavor into a whole new dimension. While this is cooking, I'm already calculating my next move, and here it comes. This is going to surprise you, but you've seen me use it often. It's a wonderful stable base. This is chopped bacon, and you can use any kind of bacon, but chop is extremely important because you want for this bacon to melt into the base and melt ultimately into the soup. As the mirepoix is cooking and picking up all the flavors, it's time for us to build another layer of flavors, which is ham. Now, this ham is basic ham, and you do not see a package like this at the store. So what I've done, I've gone to the supermarket, they have a deli in my supermarket, and I asked for a single slice of ham, about the thickness of my finger, so you can tell them 3/4 of an inch, and then I cut it in small dice. Why? First, I like the decoration that this gives, but also I like to add the ham at this point cut into this way so that it spreads the flavor that is typical of the ham, which combining now with the bacon and with the soffritto underneath is going to open up another avenue of flavor. This is like a road that we're taking together. Now we go with our main ingredient, butternut squash. What are you noticing about this butternut squash? Let me show you. Cut in small dice. Why? I want to give this a very rustic look, and I want for the butternut squash to cook fairly quickly. And also I like the way in which the butternut squash looks like on the spoon, and the smaller pieces are more pleasing to me. Now we go with a splash of white wine. Once we get to the white wine, increase the heat just briefly and stir. We want to pick up the brown bits that are trapped at the bottom of the pan. In spite of the fact that this is a non-stick pan, you will see how as the wine reduces, it darkens up in color. Those are the juices that are reinserted into this dish. Then we go with an addition of chicken stock. There is another addition that I'm about to execute that I would like to explain first. We are going to use cannellini beans. I got a thing for cannellini, so I cannot tell you it's traditional, it's the way it should be. I love cannellini. And what we have done, we've taken the cannellini beans, putting into a small food processor, and basically process them down to a mush, a cream. But what I want to do to this soup is, without articulating too many steps, is also to thicken it up. But keep this in mind. What we have done in this fashion, we have exposed the flesh of the beans. Why am I referring to beans as flesh? Not only their protein, but they're going to be picking up all the flavors that are in there and carrying them through, maintaining this wonderful thickness and creaminess to the soup, which is essential to what we do. You want to add enough to create texture, but not so much that you make it so thick that it looks like a pudding. This that we're doing next is just a matter of getting it even creamier, and that's by adding some whipping cream, but not so much, just enough to cloud the soup. And we're gonna bring this to a boil, and then we're gonna let it simmer for a few moments. Now, this is the kind of soup that puts you in a good mood. First, you already know what it's going to taste like by looking at it. Second, there's the addition now that's Parmesan cheese. You can add pecorino if you want to, but I think I agree with my wife in this matter. Parmigiano Reggiano is a far better cheese, nicely grated. We're now going to add it to the soup. But first, I want to do one thing, turn off the heat altogether. Here we go. Now watch the cheese melt into it. To me, this is the best part of it all. And look already the consistency, nice and cheesy. Oh my gosh, this is so splendid. Every bite, it's a promise. Every bite is a bit of satisfaction. That's it. The soup is ready. It looks fantastic. And now we're ready to plate it. The Artistry of Soup is a book that I will write one day. Next to pasta is one of my favorite meals. And what I love about the fact that soup is more than just a meal. Soup is something that comforts the soul. This particular soup is an evolvement of everything that I learned from my parents with a lot of personality of my own, and truly is a small little masterpiece. And this is something that brings me back to my past, connects my present, and puts a huge smile on my face. And this is how you make butternut squash soup with cannellini beans and ham. So, soup can be an opener to a dinner. Soup can be a moment by yourself on a cold day inside the house, reheated in a small bowl. Soup can be something that you share with your loved one on a romantic night, antecedent to the food that will follow. Soup is anything you want it to be. But the beautiful thing about soup is that if you paint it just right, soup, just like life, is beautiful. Okay, sure. I'll do it by word.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And big smile at the camera, and action.
And today we're gonna discuss, did I do
You totally did. That was really nice, Nick.
what is it again I'm talking about?
Today we're talking about is soup. Is soup really good for the soul? Some of the recipes stay for the soul.
Welcome into my kitchen. I am so happy because I get to share with you some of my greatest recipes. Today, we are going to make lobster stock. Something that's easy to make just using the lobster shells and turn it into pasta with lobster sauce. Something that I would call perfect. The langoustine sliders. And we end with white chocolate pudding. Mamma mia. And today, we're going to discuss how the Stellino family was attacked by a giant lobster in their kitchen. Come for the recipes. Stay for the story. I am 60 years old. So the story to make sense, you have to place it about 53 years ago. I just turned 7. My brother was 5.5. My father on this one Sunday brought a whole box of fish. There were clams, mussels, and there was this creature that none of us had ever seen. The creature was all covered with seaweed that had been placed on top of it to keep it fresh. I remember my father lifting the creature, showing to my mom, and the first thing that I noticed was a tail that went back and forth, and claws that kept clipping like this. And my mom looking at my dad and saying, Vincenzino, ma che cos'è sta cosa? Meaning, little Vinny. My mom always called my dad little Vinny. Said, little Vinny, what is this thing? And my father, una ragosta! È una ragosta! Which in Italian, aragosta means lobster. And my mom says, hey, how do you cook this? In the pot of water in which we cook the pasta, the same pot, we cook the aragosta, and it will cook. It turns red. It becomes red afterwards. And when it's red, it's finished. My mom looked at my dad. My dad looked at my mom, and the pot was already boiling because we were about to have Sunday pasta. And she took the aragosta, and she placed it in the pot. Why am I smiling? Because I'm about to make a wonderful dish with lobster. And you're lucky. I'm going to show you to make lobster stock, and I'm going to show you to make this wonderful lobster sauce for pasta. Are you ready? Let me show you how to make it. It's very easy these days to make your own lobster stock. All you need to do is find a store that will sell you a lobster. They will cook it for you as well. They'll crack it open, so by the time you bring it home, all that you need to worry about is to clean the inside of the lobster, the head part of it, which I showed you how to do. Now, there's still a couple of things that we need to do because we want to use these shells to make the stock, and I want to show you exactly how. So in here we have the whole lobster that has been cracked in half already, and I want you to see it on the other side because this is the most important part. So at this point, what I want to do is to crack the shell for good, and one lobster goes this way, the other piece goes the other way. And then very attentively, what I want to do is to actually take out the lobster tail. Now, this is very important. This lobster is about 1.5 pounds, and as you can see, there is very little amount of meat that's left over in the tail after we're done with this process. It's just the way in which it is. So here we go with this part. Now, here we are with the rest of the body. What I like to do is to cut the shell in smaller pieces. So here we go, one piece like this. Here we go one other piece like this. Make sure you use a nice knife and you guide it all the way through. So at this point, what I like to do is to place them into a bowl, and we'll continue with the other half of the lobster. Now, you notice that first I bring down the hand. Once I have the blade, then I push down. Do not do this unless you know where the tip of the knife is at. This is extremely important. A lot of people put themselves with the hand ahead of the knife, and they think they're gonna go and chop the lobster. This motion, very dangerous. Avoid it if you can. And here we go with the knuckle, and this part of it is gone. So this also, I will add to the bowl right in here. Now, what we have left is the knuckle meat. This requires some violence. Do not do it with a blade. Do it with the back of the knife. So the first thing that you do, you hit it right here. Once it's done, this piece right here is what comes out. And using a towel, because this will rip you apart, you want to snap it off and make sure that you take out this piece. Why the usage of the towel? I want you to see that the lobster has the spine built into it. If you go and grab it like this, it will cut you right into the skin. These are the things that you definitely want to avoid. So we have a piece of meat here on the inside, over here. Another piece over here, I'll put with the other meat. And we have other pieces of shell that we'll put back in the shell. We have one more. We have broken down the shell of the lobster, and now we're going to make the stock. Let me show you how. One of the things that people are always afraid when it does come to making a lobster stock is that it's a very difficult recipe to make. Not at all. And I'll show you exactly how. The most important ingredients are the shells. Yes, the shells are full of life. They have the essence of the lobster. But we need to be able to bring this essence out and to create the stock, because the stock is the most important part of making the sauce. So let me show you how. We have the olive oil in there. To the olive oil, we're going to add first a little bit of garlic. I cut it thick, and then we're going to start what's known as the sofrito. The sofrito is made of carrots, finely chopped, of course, onions, celery, some sprigs of thyme, which is fantastic for the sauce. Thyme is my favorite spice, and a little bit of chopped bacon. Why? You're right. Why am I putting bacon inside a stock made for fish, crustaceans that is? I have found that there's something magical about chopped bacon, and I pretty much ended up using it in most of my sauces. What it does for me, it opens up a flavor that is completely unusual. And it marries well with everything, and it gives a base that's big and strong. And even though this is about lobster, this bacon will actually marry with the lobster flavor and expand it onto the other side. For those of you that don't like bacon, do not like using bacon with fish, this is not necessary. But to me, this is one step that really takes you to the other side. At this point, we add a little bit of my magic. This is a rub that I usually put over my meats, but it works fantastic. Is a mix of salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, and brown sugar, all in the same amount. The more we build the flavors at this point, the more it will take us closer to where we want to go. Oh, hey, look how beautiful it is. It's at this point that we add the shells into the pan. So for a few moments, what I want to do is to cook them into the base so that they pick up the flavor that has been developed by the base. now is a wonderful addition, brandy. Why brandy instead of wine? I find that brandy brings out an elegant flavor even more than wine does. But if you were to use wine, there would not be a problem. You notice that I am moving the shells around, and at the same time I'm pushing down. Why am I pushing down? I'm encouraging this squeezing of the remnant juices that are still inside of them. And trust me, there's an enormous amount of juice. This stock is going to be fantastic. At this point, most of the brandy has evaporated, and that's when we add the other ingredients. First, we go with some stock. Let's talk about the stock. Chicken stock marries wonderfully with this. Chicken stock is fairly weak in terms of personality. It means that it changes with the other ingredients that you put it into. As a matter of fact, I use it also to make a wonderful dish together with clams. If you have fish stock handy, even better. But here we go. Together with the chicken stock, we add tomato sauce. Store-bought is fine, or you can use my recipe. It's at this point that we continue mixing all these ingredients together. Now, we're going to bring this to a boil. So once it does reach a boil, the next thing that you want to do is reduce it down to a simmer, put it on the back of the stove, and let it go for 30 minutes or so. Now, let's continue, and let me show you how to make the sauce. We got the pasta in the water. All we have to do is the sauce. It's gonna be fun. I cannot wait to show you this. This is one of my favorite dishes. Plus, it reminds me of my dad. First thing we do, we add the garlic to the olive oil. And I like to add it early in the process because before I add the other ingredients, I want to get the olive oil nice and hot. And one way for us to notice this is through the garlic. As the garlic is waiting for the heat to arrive to the pan, a little bit of red pepper flakes. Why? My father used to do it. I love doing it. It's one of those things that I do all the time. For those of you that don't know it, I actually have a little piece of my dad with me today, right here, as I'm showing you this recipe. This watch right here belonged to my dad. My whole life, he was wearing it. And when he passed away, I took it with me. Actually, he gave it to me long before he passed away. He was totally surprised that I had the watch redone. Why is this watch so important? The watch works. It tells the time perfectly. But every time I wear it, I feel as if his spirit is with me. So hopefully, I will do a real honor to him by showcasing one of the best dishes he taught me. The garlic is now starting to jump exactly the way we want to. At this point, we add the onions. If they're white, if they're red, doesn't make much of a difference. They're just wonderful. At this point, our flow is to basically lower the heat a little bit and get the onion to cook on medium-low heat until they soften up wonderfully. And this is basil, fresh basil. Why am I adding it now? A lot of people have this issue, say, why, if you add the fresh basil now, it will burn, it will turn dark. But there's another thing that the basil does at this point. The basil is kind of sacrificing itself and giving itself to the sauce. We gotten what we want in here, and it's at this point that I like to add the chopped tomatoes. These are Italian peeled tomatoes. As this is cooking, I want to add one more flavor base to this to recall the flavor that we have into the lobster stocks. And that is a little bit of brandy. I'm gonna cook this until most of the brandy has evaporated. Now at this point, you can just add salt and pepper. That would taste fantastic. But I add a little bit of my Nixtalino special rub because I want a little bit of the onion powder, garlic powder to penetrate the paprika. This is the most important part. Now, I'm going to pay attention to this. I have the stock that has basically cooked to its perfection right next to the pan. So I'm going to be using this ladle to fill up the stock and add it. Look how beautiful it is. Look at the color that's picked up already. This is the flavor of our sauce. This is the most important thing that you could possibly do. And it is at this point that I like to add it exactly like this. Look how gorgeous it is. Mamma mia, che bellezza. Now, two schools of thoughts on. We can wait for the sauce to reduce the sauce consistency, then top it over the pasta. That's one way to go. I don't subscribe to that. Why? You have a sauce that's just beautiful. You want for the pasta to cook the last few minutes into the sauce. Now, you will notice that the pasta is slightly undercooked. You can see it by the stiffness of the pasta. This is exactly where we want to have it. I have undercooked the pasta by a full 2.5, 3 minutes because I want the last few minutes to take place here into the sauce. And to ensure the flavor even more, a little bit more stock. Most of the sauce has been absorbed, and now we want to add the lobster pieces to it. And this is a last final touch. The pasta is basically done. I'm gonna turn it off because I don't want to cook the lobster meat until it becomes tough. And it's at this point that I like to add fresh basil with a chiffonade. And at this point, I want to mix the sauce and the pasta one more time. The pasta is ready. The sauce is perfect. All we have to do is plate it. There's several ways in which you can look at this pasta. One of it is pasta with a very luxurious ingredient, lobster. But to me, it's magic, period. This pasta has the soul of my father in it, and it's a pasta that taught me how to dream. I hope that you will make it for your family, and you will find the same joy that I found when my father made it for me. And this is how you make pasta with lobster sauce. Now, for those of you at home that might attempt to actually boil lobster, you want to make sure that the pot is big enough for the lobster to fit in. Also, make sure that the claws are bound together with those rubbers. Because what happened to this particular lobster is that it did not fit into the hot pot. And the lobster took advantage through this astonishing ability that he had with his claws to hook himself on the outer part of the pot. And as my mom was trying to drop the tail into the hot water, the lobster, as if a circus performer, flipped outward on top of the stove, down into the floor, under the cabinets. All that I could hear was a clickety, 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 clickety. I knew this creature was somewhere. I got so terrified, I jumped on top of my chair. My brother got more scared than me, jumped on the chair first and then on the table. And then I remember my father, Massimiliano, to the right! And my mother to my father, Vincenzino, to the left. They both had brooms trying to capture this lobster that was running through the kitchen, trying to find a way out. They're not lobsters, they're not shrimps. They're langoustine. What do I do with them? Sliders. Let me show you how to make it. So, are you always in a good mood? I am. How do I do that? I cook and I eat the food that I make. But I have to say, one of the greatest sandwiches I've ever had was a lobster sandwich. I had in New Hampshire, landlocked. Yet, in New Hampshire, there must be a culture about lobster sandwiches that to me, it was like, oh my God. But one of the things that I realized is that there is a certain skill in how to bring together very simple ingredients, basically no more than 3 or 4 at most, and through the freshness of the product, create something that really has a fantastic personality. Enough talking. Let me show you how to make it because this is a very difficult recipe. The langoustines, I bought them like this at the store, and they are already cooked and shelled. So we're gonna place them right here into our bowl. Now, the next thing that I like to do to this is celery. Why celery? It was the way in which I had it when I had the lobster roll, and I don't want to change anything. I believe that this celery has an enormous importance in the taste that it does have. Chopped white onions, a small amount, but super, super fine chop because I do not want to feel them while I bite into it. I just want them to share the flavor. The next addition of flavor is Nick's Magic Rub, or Nick's Special Rub, or Nick's Invention. What is the name? I don't know. I came up with stuff all the time, I forgot. But why is this important? Why does it add? Salt, pepper, equal parts, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, and brown sugar. It's important to us because it has a series of elements of flavor which are truly, truly spectacular. But as of right now, we have not yet completed the mission. The mission is only completed when we add the mayonnaise. The mayonnaise will add for 2 ways for us. One as a binding agent, keeping together all these wonderful tales of the langoustine, and this is quite important that it gets done this way. The other part about it is also has a flavor of its own that it imparts into the langoustine and marries with all the other additional ingredients that we have added. Now, this is something that's done fresh, a la minute, and right away brought out. One of the things that I've learned is out on the East Coast, sometime at this point, that they use a technique where they crash crackers and they add it to the mixture so that it binds to get a little bit more and also has some elements of flavor. It's good. I like it better this way, without the crackers. So here we are. The last thing that I'm going to do is an addition of chives. Why chives? I have a love for chives. I love the way they taste, I love the way they look, and I love the color that they bring in. And basically, believe it or not, we are done. All that I need to do now is to plate it. Let me show you how. Now look at these 3 rolls, and it seems such a simple preparation. What's there to be excited about? The truthfulness of all this is it all started with a lobster in the kitchen of the Stellino family in Palermo. To me, this is the coronation of a life lived well, full of passion, full of joy, full of love. My father and my mom gave me these huge opportunities, and not only by taking me here to America, but also by sharing with me the secrets of their cooking. And I was able here in America to assimilate all of these thoughts and be able to compound them with a lot of other lessons that I learned while I was here, and being able to create dishes like this that make me and all my friends smile. And this is how you make langoustine sliders. Finally, my father was able to capture the lobster, put it into the pot, cover it with the pot cover until eventually the lobster subsided and provided for us the nourishment of that day. So every time I see a lobster, the first thing that I have in mind before I cook it is the very one moment in my life when it looked as if it was something that had been cut out of a comedy movie. I love white chocolate pudding. How much? Oh, I sit up at night and I say to myself, what will I have for dessert today? And everybody says, you should have some fruit. And I say to them, no, I will have white chocolate pudding. Let me show you how to make it. This is best if you make it in the morning for dinner, or if you make it the night before for dinner, because it does need about 5 hours or so to become nice and hard in the refrigerator. Enough talking, let's snap into action. So in the pan that's nice and hot, the first thing that we do, we add the half and half. You can also add milk, but don't add cream alone. Cream will still work wonderfully well, but it's too heavy, I feel. Next thing, we go with the white chocolate. These days you can buy white chocolate just like the chocolate chips that we put inside the cookies. And at this point, the one thing that you want to do is to gently stir this over medium heat until all of the chocolate melts in there. At this point, there are several things that you could do. You could add chocolate liqueur if you want to. You could add rum. Rum is favored by the Italian bakers because it does not color the mixture. Chocolate liqueur, on the other hand, it would. But I like to maintain it simple, just exactly as it is. I just want the sugar and the chocolate to tell their story. Keep in mind, this is not a dish that you want to do on a daily basis because it will ruin your diet. Not because what you eat is too much, but because you're never gonna eat exactly one single portion. If you're anything like me, this could be a real problem. So do it sparingly once in a while, and when you do it, enjoy it. The white chocolate has melted completely. It's time for us to add the most important ingredient. Now, at this point, you want to have a whisk going at it continuously. And here we have the cornstarch. The cornstarch you want to break as soon as it hits the cream, and you want to maintain this continuous stirring for avoiding that the cornstarch solidifies into little balls on the inside. What some of the people do, they like to add this to the half and half before you add it to the chocolate. I do not favor the technique. The reason why I do not favor the technique is because I found that many times what happens to the cornstarch, it doesn't quite liquefy into the pudding, and you still have an aftertaste of the powderiness of the uncooked cornstarch. Mamma mia, that's a lot of words, and all of them in English and with no accent. Well, maybe there was a lot of accent. Anyway, we gotta go into this now. You want to bring this to a boil and you want to see the beginning of a thickening. Look at this, it's starting to thicken up. And this is the point where you know that you're pretty much where you want to go. And at this point, what we do, we turn off the heat underneath because the coagulation of this pudding, the finishing part of this pudding, will actually happen in the refrigerator. We're going to add this attentively inside the martini glass, one of my favorite containers. For this to get the consistency that we want, we need to place it in the refrigerator for a few hours. Now, one of the great things is that this one has two different layers at the top of it. One is obviously the chocolate, and I'm going to cover all of it with chocolate as much as I can. Why is this important? And why dark chocolate instead of the white chocolate? This is a thing of mine. I totally get into it. But the chocolate is not the only thing we're gonna put in. It's an enormous amount of chopped pistachio. Why? First and foremost, Sicily is known for its pistachio. Second part of it is that I want, with every bite that you take, to have a certain crustiness that flows around. And look how beautiful it is as I turn it around. You see all the elements of the chocolate, the toasted pistachio. And then, in typical Sicilian fashion, we have to put a little cherry on top, a maraschino cherry. Why? Because it's even sweeter than the dessert. I know, I'm 60 years old and I'm still talking about dessert as if I was a child, but this is not a dessert. This is a time machine. This is something that brings you back to when life was beautiful, wonderful. And if you're having a bad day, if things are not going your way, you know what? Make yourself a wonderful white chocolate pudding. Why? I'll tell you why. Because it will make your life a lot better. It makes me smile every time. And this is how you make white chocolate pudding. And yet, I must say, these moments of silliness, of oddity, are the one things that really keeps me bound to this past of a have and to the importance of a family. Because even the things that go wrong, in this case, you know, attempting to cook the lobster, boil the lobster, are the one things that stayed in the history and the stories that we kept telling when I was 15, 16, 17, and still to this very day, when my brother and I get together once in a while, we talk about this very moment. I was very lucky to have had that moment. I was very lucky to have seen that moment with my family, and more than that. It was great to see my mom and my dad doing the kind of things that usually my brother and I